But if you ask the average person in India, what do you think about the British Raj? It often comes down to that building behind me, the Tower of London, and to one single diamond which is inside there, which is the Kohinoor. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? There have been Bollywood films that have been made about going in there and trying to get the Kohinoor out of there in some form or the other. I don't think that's necessarily happening very soon, but why this entire fascination with the Kohinoor? Let's just take a look at that story.
Kohinoor, or Mountain of Light, one of the biggest and most famous diamonds in the world. Shining bright for centuries, but casting a dark shadow on the pages of history. This gem is in the headlines once again because of the coronation of UK's King Charles III. The Kohinoor is part of the British crown jewels. But how it got there has been a matter of controversy, and whether it should be returned to India is an even bigger one. Now, as the famous jewel gets passed on to the new monarchs, here's a look at its stormy past, speculative future, and at present, how it symbolizes the continuing dark legacy of British colonialism. There are many hypotheses about the origin of the Kohinoor diamond, but they all agree that it was in India. As per some accounts, such a gem was first described in Sanskrit texts as early as 3200 BC. But this is a contested claim. Some say that the jewel was taken by Alauddin Khalji from the Raja of Malwa in 1304. Others claim that it was given to Babur's son by the Raja of Gwalior after the Battle of Panipat in 1526. Yet others say that it came from a Kolur mine and was presented to Shah Jahan in 1656. Another controversial theory is that it was cut from the great Mughal diamond found in the Golconda mines in 1650. So how did it fall into the hands of the British? In the 1630s, it was part of Shah Jahan's throne along with the Timur ruby. In 1739, the diamond was taken by Nadir Shah when he invaded Delhi. Around a decade later, when Nadir Shah died, the gem was taken by his general Ahmad Shah. In 1813, Ahmad's descendants surrendered the Kohinoor to the Sikh ruler Ranjit Singh. In 1849, around 10 years after Ranjit Singh's death, the diamond was forcefully taken by the British from the Sikh king's 10-year-old son Duleep. In 1852, the Kohinoor was recut by the British royal jeweller to enhance its brilliance. In 1937, the jewel was added to the front of the crown worn by Queen Elizabeth II's mother. In 2002, the gem made its last public appearance at the funeral of the Queen Mother. The Kohinoor may be the most famous, but it is far from being the only treasure stolen by British colonialists. Tipu's tiger, a wooden automation with movement and noise mechanisms, was taken by the East India Company in 1799. The Sultanganj Buddha, the largest known early medieval cast metal sculpture, was taken to the UK in the 1860s. The Amravati marbles are sculptures taken from the Amravati Stupa in the 18th century. Then there are the Elgin marbles, ancient Greek sculptural panels taken by Lord Elgin from Athens in the 1800s. The Rosetta Stone, key to understanding ancient Egypt, was taken by the French who lost it to the British in 1815. There are also the Maui megalithic statues taken from Easter Island in the 1860s. Some UK institutions have begun to return some valuable objects, including the famous Benin bronzes from Nigeria and some Magdala artifacts taken from Ethiopia. But many more continue to remain hostage in the UK. Regarding the Kohinoor diamond, the Indian government has said that it raises the matter periodically with the British to look for a satisfactory resolution. But the UK has been more emphatic with its words. In 2010, then Prime Minister David Cameron said that if London says yes to returning the Kohinoor, then suddenly the British Museum would be empty. Given the diamond's controversial history, King Charles III has decided not to have the Kohinoor at his coronation. But will hiding the treasure silence demands for righting historical wrongs? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Well, who better to talk about the Kohinoor and all the aspects around it than William Dalrymple, who's actually, for some reason, William, not sitting here in London, but is sitting in a nice house in Delhi, telling us about the entire coronation. William, before I jump to the Kohinoor, you're watching all this spectacle. It's actually the first coronation in all of our lifetimes. How do you see the excitement and all the buzz and all the fuss that there is around this?
Well, I'm sitting in Delhi, and there's no excitement and no buzz. You're the one in London, Vikram. So,
Oh, come on, William, that's not entirely fair. I'm sure there's some fuss that is happening in Delhi as well, not just here in London.
I mean, I was very struck when I first came to Delhi in the mid-'80s, how far India had shed its imperial baggage. You know, I came at a time when the British were just sort of rediscovering imperial nostalgia, watching Gandhi and The Jewel in the Crown and all those programs that now seem like ancient history. And even then, even in the mid-'80s, when there was only, I suppose, 40 years of independence, already British rule seemed as distant then as the Romans' rule in Britain. You know, it seemed like ancient history. Today, it's not even in the same millennia. It seems almost impossible to imagine the British ever did rule India, and that it was only 75 years ago is extraordinary to me.
Obviously, there is a relationship of some sort, right? That's why Britain still matters. There's a history, and there's still a existing relationship of some sort. Not least the fact you've got a person of Indian origin as the Prime Minister out here, and somebody of Pakistani origin up in Scotland. There's a relationship.
Well, I think it's very interesting. I mean, apparently Britain is the largest foreign investor in India still. And yet, it was, I think, the 30th or 35th country that Modi visited after he became prime minister. The British are way down on his priorities, and he's shown no fondness at all for the country. In fact, he's gone out of his way to remove all remaining traces of imperial vestiges in Delhi, like the renaming of Rajpath and the placing of Netaji in the Chatri, all that sort of thing. I think there are a lot of Indians in Britain. India and Britain have a great deal of business to do together, and it can be a very productive relationship. And if you think of all the Indian writers who are published out of London, there's still a huge amount of intellectual and academic traffic between the two. And yet, diplomatically, it seems that there's amazingly little warmth or contact. I'm always surprised that, in the sense that that Britain doesn't have more of a say in modern Indian politics.
So yes, there is certainly that distance, William. I think you're right when it comes to that country to country, the government to government level. But perhaps there's the question of the diaspora. There's a very large diaspora, lots of linkages there, and maybe that will become the binding factor as we go forward. The diaspora.
For example, the way that the three most right-wing characters we've had in government, really, and as far as sort of immigration are concerned, probably Suella Braverman, Rishi Sunak, and Priti Patel. The Indians are further to the right of immigration than any of the Goras.
All right, William, lots of other subjects to talk about, but let's now talk about the Kohinoor in that building, the Tower of London right there behind me, because it's interesting how, for so many Indians, that's the number one subject that they keep talking about when it comes to being out here. Now, the Kohinoor has played a part in coronations in the past, but this time is likely to be somewhat different.
Well, the Kohinoor is an interesting story because there's a huge mythology around it. The hard facts are actually amazingly few and far between. Most people in India believe that it was found in Golconda, that it was the eye of an idol, that it went through a succession of plundering Islamic hands and various invaders until it reached Delhi. In reality, there's not a single reference that's 100% certain to that diamond before 1739, when Nadir Shah took it, and we have the first reference to in Herat, where it had been taken by Nadir Shah when it was still on the top of the peacock throne. And all these stories about the eyes of idols and all this stuff is in fact imperial myth-making. The Lord Dalhousie, who was responsible for taking it from Dulip Singh at the point of a bayonet in 1839, commissioned a report, which I've seen in the Indian National Archives. And that's where all these stories begin. And they are just that, stories. They are the stories of the jewelers in Chandni Chowk and the old Begums of the Red Fort told in in 1839, 100 years after the stone had left Delhi. And so facts are few and far between. But the reality is that it became a symbol for the British of their sort of imperial triumph. And they put it at the center of the Great Exhibition in 1851. And that was the moment that, in a sense, it became identified with empire. It became literally the jewel in the crown. And so post-colonially, in reverse, it's become the symbol of imperial loss. It's everything that India lost to Britain, everything that was plundered, everything that was taken, everything that was removed. And this tiny stone, and it is small now, it's not even in the top 100 of diamonds. It's the size of an egg, while it's in a case in the Tower of London normally, sitting beside the Cullinan that's the size of a football.
Yeah, as I said, it's a very popular part of Indian culture. There's even a movie about how someone can come in and swipe the Kohinoor from that building behind me.
I think again, there's things that got sort of slightly out of hand in the sense that I think a lot of people in India think it's on its way home almost, that, it's nearly there, that the first thing that happened when the Queen died was everyone said, is the Kohinoor coming home now? I think the reality is that the British haven't even woken up to realizing the scale of feeling in India about this. The British, you've always got to remember, and not taught their imperial history. They know nothing about Jallianwala Bagh and all the imperial horror stories that you guys grow up on. And there's great ignorance about where things like the Kohinoor came from, or indeed the entire contents of the British Museum. And gradually, there is now a process of education. There's a lot of people writing books. There's, Shashi's famous Oxford Union debate went viral among Brits as well as among Indians. There've been a lot of books, like my own book on the Kohinoor. I have a podcast called Empire, which has 6 million downloads a week now. It's extraordinary. This is a subject which people are waking up to. But it's still very early days. And most British people, I think, would be astonished to hear that India thinks it's going to get the Kohinoor back.
All right, William, the empire is not coming back anytime soon. The empire could be striking back in some form or the other. And from what you're saying, the Kohinoor is not likely to be coming back anytime soon either. But not going to be a part of the coronation, not part of the coronation. So some differences, some sensitivity there, some difference.
Well, I think that's very interesting. And I think what it shows, funnily enough, is that Prince Charles is far more sensitive to this than the Tory government. The Tory government, including all these very right-wing East African Indians who are now in the cabinet, who are busy. I mean, Suella Braverman is a huge supporter of the British Empire. Bizarrely, you find the Indians waving the flag more, perhaps perhaps it's important in a sense for them to do that, and it's something that, an act they have to play. But I think there's a feeling that some of the rhetoric we've been getting is genuine out of them, I think there's a long way to go before this diamond really enters the national conversation in Britain, and we have a point where people really seriously can begin thinking about sending it back. Then there's the whole question of who to send it to, because of course, there's the Pakistanis claim it, the Bangladeshis claim it, the Iranians claim it, the Afghans claim it, and the Taliban claim it. And so there's and I mean, those are not sort of minor claims. The Pakistanis were the first to get in a claim in, I think, 1963. That Jim Callaghan, Bhutto, or no, it was in 1973. They put in a claim. At the moment that Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, there are all those pictures of Ashraf Ghani's office with the Taliban on his desk. Behind the desk is a picture of Ahmad Shah Durrani with the Kohinoor. And so it's a central part of Afghan myth too. Then there's Nadir Shah and the Iranians. So it's a long and complicated history.
All right, William, last word from you. Now, you have that podcast. 6 million people are downloading it every week on the empire. Obviously, still a subject of considerable interest. What should we be thinking about when it comes to the empire itself? Well,
I think the empire is long gone. There's no, I don't think anyone in Britain thinks they really have an empire. I think the coronation is about a new king. He's our head of state in Britain. He's on our stamps and on our notes. And I think it's very much an internal British thing now. I don't think anyone's sitting there thinking that the King Charles is going to revive the empire, or that story is long gone. And as we all know, this is now the age of the rise of Asia, and China and India are the empires of the future.
The empires of the future. That's an interesting line, William, which we're going to take from you from here. Thank you so much, William Dalrymple, for joining us.